Happy Pride Month, everybody. So, I just wanted to say Happy Pride Month. I used to be a part of the LGBTQ community, and my story is that I got out of that community because I learned that that is actually not who I am. I had a lot of breakthroughs and discoveries after my mushroom trip and some intense trauma therapy. Here's my thing. I keep seeing, especially during Pride Month, these conversations kick up where there was this lady's video where she's like, oh, there's an agenda being pushed on our kids. She was in Target, like there's this gay agenda. And I think that's such an odd thing, because to know my story is to know that I didn't grow up in an environment immersed in gay culture. There were no gay commercials. There was no Pride that I knew about. Pride events, I know they've been going on, but I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. The environment I grew up in honestly felt kind of like conservative black folks. Not conservative like Trump people, but just like black people. And if you know what I'm saying when I say that, but I feel like my grandmother had a friend who had a son who, his name was Charles, and Charles was gay. He was flamboyant, but he was still like masculine in his presentation. But he was very sassy. Like, you knew Charles was gay. But it was still, I was in an environment where those things weren't really discussed, but they just were kind of known. But again, Charles was the only one I was around, or had encountered. He would only come around sometimes. So it's so odd when I hear people say that there's this gay agenda when you see gay people or people in the LGBTQ community just existing, and it's like, oh, there's a gay agenda. It's like, no, people in that community are human. People in the LGBT community are human, and everyone deserves to exist in whatever capacity, as long as it's not harming others or themselves. But the reason why it's annoying to hear that is because I was in that community for 20 years. And, I had to find my way out because I didn't quite understand, some of the things that attributed to me being in that community. It wasn't authentic to who I was, but it was safe for who I needed to feel safe for, which was myself. So it's just so interesting that now, I feel like the black community has found another scapegoat for their issues. I'm a black woman. I'm speaking on black people's issues. And instead of looking at ourselves and saying, maybe the way that I've communicated messages about the opposite sex can be off-putting and subconsciously cause this child who doesn't have experience yet. Maybe they're processing this in a way that is opposite of what my goal is. So I know why my mother used to tell me men wasn't this and men wasn't that, and I would, and her pain, she gave me so much of her pain. And then my father, who was a drug addict, he validated these messages because he couldn't be around. He didn't do what he needed to do as my father. So my mother, in those messages, saying things like that only confirmed fear for me. It didn't give me any understanding of nuance and that all men ain't bad men. It was just kind of a blanket understanding, like all men are horrible. And then, so I'm in the LGBTQ community and I'm with women for 20 years of my life, and I feel safe because for the most part, that is a very, the lesbian community can be, I don't know about the white lesbian community, but the black lesbian community, if you're around the right people, you just feel safe. You don't really have to go outside of that space for a lot. Like, there's support, there's love, there's nurturing, there's care, there's a lot of things. And so you feel safe. And then, I was in romantic relationships with women, for long-term relationships, and it is a safety. And you have to learn for yourself, are you really fulfilled? Is this something that you really are? Or are you safe? And I've had this conversation before in other videos, but for this one, I'm just saying. Then I get, in the past 5 years, now we have podcast culture that's amplifying whatever toxic messages our aunties and mothers and grandmothers taught us about men because of their pain. The women that we grew up with, in my age range, I'm 40, the women we grew up with gave us messaging through their lens. So not all of it, because I'm sure there's always been happily married women who have happy relationships with men. But what was amplified most of the time is a fear-based message. Men are going to hurt you. No man can be faithful. Men are horrible. Men aren't meant to be this and that, this, and this. And there's always this underlying message that you have to protect yourself from men, even now. Now, the issue is that there's no balance in the conversation, because yes, there are horrible men out here, but there are horrible women. And when you go through that, you really start to realize, you start to believe, I can't do it. I can't trust it. And I guess that the outcome is different for everybody. So some women may just become cold-hearted and never be able to connect with a man, but they are sexually attracted to men, so they, use them for whatever, and then they end up being called, she just using this man, blah, blah, blah. Some women don't deal with men at all. Some women decide they're going to be single. Some women find comfort in women. Because for me, in hindsight, it just felt like subconsciously, because I didn't have any conscious decision to say men are terrible, I'm just going to avoid it. I think it was subconscious to say men are scary, so just avoid the threat. Why put yourself in harm's way? I'm like that naturally. I'm like that anyway about everything. So subconsciously, I'm for sure that's what happened. And that is with no gay influence, no t-shirts with rainbows, no bumper stickers, no drag shows. None of that was a part of my story. My story was submerged in heterosexual people telling me things about men that were their truths. That is not to invalidate their experience. My mother had a legitimately bad experience in her life with men, and I hate that for her. On the flip side, it was very unfair, and I never stood a chance because terror. And then if your father is on the flip side of that with an addiction also, and he's kind of like validating these messaging with his absence, then your self-worth tells you you can't be with a man. You're not good enough. That's what happened to me. I would see men when I'm out and be like, oh, he's so fine. Or I would see couples, like men and women together, and I would look and be like, how does she have a man? Like literally trying to understand the dynamic that makes it work, because men are terrible. So how is she safe? How does she feel safe? I'm telling you, this shit is deep. And that is why the conversation that straight people have about the gay agenda is dumb to me. Gay people didn't make me gay. Rainbows and drag queens and nobody did that but straight people in their messaging. And I think it's wild that we still don't have a sense of accountability for the harm we do to young people in our community with the messaging. So now we have podcast culture. I get divorced from my ex-wife, and I'm walking into a world of, now I can see the conversations like in great detail. Like there's thousands of them. There's thousands of podcasts of men saying horrible things, just deplorable shit, just tacky, trashy, classless things that validate the messaging I have been fighting my whole life to understand and fight. So now there's podcasts where it's amplified. Men is like, I ain't doing this for a woman, I ain't doing that, and women don't deserve it, blah, blah, blah. And then there's podcasts of women like, it's like a continuous stream of consciousness from my mother's conversations to now. And again, these are not gay people having these conversations. The only lesbian I know that has these conversations on a platform is Princella. And I think she's toxic. I think she's the opposite. Like you can't look at Kevin Samuels and have beef with him and not look at Princella and not have beef with her, because women aren't always innocent. And that, like, they have something called a pick me now. Maybe maybe I'll be called a pick me for that statement, but I've been around women. Straight women, gay women, whoever, but I was not in circles with men heavy at all. I just got into spaces where, and I'm about to get married now, so my time with men was brief, but I enjoyed it. I had great experiences, and it's not because it was all great people. It was because I trusted myself, and I had an understanding of myself that allowed me not to let a nigga play in my face. That was it. It wasn't because these men have shown me that they're noble characters. It's just that, no, a couple weeks in, if this don't feel right, it ain't right. And I gotta go. So this is not some plight to defend men and their bullshit, because that's not it. I'm not absolving them of the things that they do, or the least of them. I'm not absolving the least of them in the bullshit that they perpetuate that makes it harder in the community to find love and relationship. But what I'm saying is that on the flip side of that, even though my mother was ill in the way that she was ill, she made things hard for my father. I watched that too. I saw her hit that man in the head with a rotary phone. I heard her call him to my face, call him a homosexual and say he's horrible. And she said some of the things he did to her, and I can't validate if they were true or not. I don't know what kind of person my father was before I came along. But what I can say is that it never gave me a chance to fully trust my father and know him for myself through my own lens, because my perception was always informed through my mother's experience. And that wasn't fair. That wasn't fair at all. So I just got annoyed when I saw that video of the lady, like, I'm in Target and they got these rainbow t-shirts and they trying to push this agenda on our kids. And I'm like, I feel like the call is coming from inside the house in the Black community when it comes to that conversation. There are men who perpetuate the story that men are terrible to their daughters, who say, men get terrified when they have daughters. I've seen it. Oh my God, I hope I don't have a daughter. Like, we have to really check ourselves before we start blaming people outside of ourselves. There's an agenda for everything. And if anything, heterosexual Black folks are perpetuating the demise of the Black family more than gay people. Gay people minding their business. And the thing is, me being in that community for so long, I had an opportunity to understand myself and what I really believe. I have some strong beliefs about same-sex relationships and all of that and this, but what I understand is that there are people who are gay and they minding their business and they in love and they starting families, they have careers and ain't bothering nobody. They not sitting there worried about straight folks and all of this, because they know who they are and they've decided who they are. And they're moving in their light. Whether you agree with it or not, that's what's happening. We're the only people, and I'm saying like the straight community at this point, but we're the only people blaming everybody else for why we can't get it together. So what I was saying in closing is that the call is usually coming from inside the house. Black folks have to do a better job at being accountable for the harm we cause to our youth with our bullshit that we spew, because we hurt and we decide that that's the best form of protection. We need to check how we think we're protecting people, because oftentimes it's not protection, it is a form of abuse. We decide because we have been hurt and misused and abused, and that to a degree at some point we accepted that as the behavior we would accept, that we decided that's how things are. Like, your reality is not the truth, and the sooner we accept that, the healthier our communities will be, because we can be more objective in our advice. So quit telling these kids, quit spewing these messages that men ain't shit, women ain't shit. If the men and women you dealt with ain't shit, cool, do better. But that ain't the case for everybody. And unless you're ready to have those conversations, you can't look at another community and people and say, yeah, and this is the reason. Like, Antoine and them down there twerking in their heels ain't the reason your man stepped out on you. That's not what happened. And Keisha and them over there kissing Ann ain't the reason that your old lady is divorcing you. That's not what's happening. That's not happening. Your daughter saw you whooping her mother's ass, and so now she decided that she didn't want to deal with that, and so women are a better choice. That's kind of what be happening. Like, y'all gotta check yourself. So that's my little 2 cents. Like I said, from a former member of the Alphabet community, happy Pride Month. I pray that you and your gay love thrive and succeed in this cruel world. And yeah, I got love for my friends who are still in that community. Regular people living regular lives and ain't worried about your children. Trust me, they raising their own. And that's kind of like, it's weird that y'all think anything else. So all right, bye.